Enlil,
Yeah.
and Enlil, who was in charge, had a complete snit fit over it. And I'm quite sure that you have read the Book of Enoch,
Absolutely.
and you know why they shifted from we own the humans to I think we're going to step back and stay behind the curtain and help the humans advance.
Well,
because of the story of that one dude that's in the book that was never there. And they thought that that was a higher power that was interceding in what they were doing.
the one dude in the book that was never where. You just lost me.
Okay, there was this one guy, I forgot his name right now. There was this one guy that presented himself to Enlil and to Enki twice. But when they talked to Anu, the king of Nibiru, which is being called the god, and they are his sons, they found out that that person never met with their father. And they know they saw this person in their dreams before the flood and some other instances in the book, but they couldn't find him. He didn't exist. So they assumed that this one person was a higher form of authority, like a god or something. And they decided to stop treating the humans the way they were, and they allowed them to create the Sumerian culture and the Egyptian culture and other cultures around the planet.
That story is picked up later on in Genesis, I believe it's the 9th chapter, with first talking about Nimrod, who was the great-grandson of Noah, and the story of how all of this comes about. Now, it's interesting. The Bible text is very short on what it says about Nimrod, but it gets more involved in the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
And the Tower of Babel actually was a real place. The first century historian Josephus went there. He said he saw it with his own eyes, and he copied down all the legends about
by Marduk.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's at that. What happens is somewhere in time with Nimrod's kingdom is when the Anunnaki show up, and I'm sure it was early on. And that's where all of our religion can be traced back to. I don't care what religion you claim to be; it can be traced right back to the ancient Sumerians and right back to Nimrod. And that's where our government comes from. So what did the Anunnaki give us? The two biggest control systems that exist on the face of the planet today, and governments and religion have been duking it out for over 4,000 years. And now,
that also might be the truth behind the the Temple Knights and that stuff, where they were saving, because there is a lineage that dates from those times on forward.
Yeah, well, you see, this
and
would
a lot of people are starting to think those are the people that are in charge in the background now.
Here's where we go into Genesis 3:15, where God says, "I will put enmity between." He's talking to the serpent here, and he says, "I'm going to," or in essence, Satan or Lucifer. He says, "I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and the woman's seed, and he will bruise you in the head, but you will bruise him in the heel." So here's an interesting prophecy. There were no other humans, according to the Bible, on the earth at this time. This starts right in the beginning. So both the woman, interestingly enough, and it's not Eve, it's an off-planetary group, if you want to call it that, but it's the woman's seed who starts battling with the serpent's seed. And the serpent seed is delivered to earth much earlier than, quote, the woman's seed. The serpent seed is delivered to earth through Babylon and then is dispersed around the earth through the events of what happened at the Tower of Babel. And so we get sun worship as the major religion in every land, and it still has a connection right down to today.
Yeah.
The Star of David, image for sun worship, the swastika, image for sun worship. There's all of these different symbols that we use for an image of sun worship, including the god who represented it, gave us the Star of Raphan, Molech.
Yes.
So there's this direct connection, and the Molech worshippers are still with us today, ruling this world. So yeah, there is a satanic seed which is ruling the world.
All right, gentlemen, hold
for a
on
break.
a second. No, actually, I'm gonna wait until the top of the hour for the break, but I do want to. We're gonna take other calls, Bob. We're gonna keep you on with us, but we're gonna take other calls as well. And let's do our best to kind of give each other a chance to speak, and because the more people you bring on, it could get hectic. So we're going to take another call, and I do want to say this, Peter. You had mentioned real quick before I take this call. You had mentioned about before or a time period when human beings were on this planet, and I had Michael Cremo on, and he's actually presented evidence that human beings have been on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years and possibly even millions of years. So it seems, I don't know what type of human being now. I mean, maybe no intelligence at all, I don't know. But they've been here for a long time. And you can comment on that if you like. But I do want to bring Papa Bear on with us here. Papa Bear, welcome to Late Night in the Midlands.
Gentlemen, how are you?
Great.
Not
How are
too
you?
bad.
Oh, my goodness.
Papa Bear, welcome. It's been a long time since I've heard your voice.
Oh, my goodness. Michael, it's good to talk to you guys. There is so much going on out there. It's just unbelievable. I can't believe it.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's being speeded up in its own time. It's like, whoa, where did this roller coaster ride come from?
Well, it's like all at once, you know? I mean, all the indications are there that we're in a polar shift. It's all happening.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And, of course, that's going to change things around quite a bit. But then again, I mean, you know about the Bible, Peter. I'm not sure if you've done the math on Daniel's timeline or not, but it's really close. We're looking at, well, from what I understand, the people are supposed to flee Jerusalem. And actually, that's coming up in about 9 days, according to the timeline.
Oh, wait a minute, isn't that Obama's going over there?
Yeah, right? Exactly, Obama's going over there. Right? You know, and they said if he went to Jerusalem, they were going to consider that an imminent threat, an act of war. So, boy, I'll tell you, that guy doesn't know how to make friends, does he?
Hell, him coming to the United States has been an act of war.
Right, but remember in the last days, barter is going to happen? Okay. Yeah. Now, I do a lot of research. There's something wrong with me. But I've noticed through the Uniform Commercial Code, UCC, that governments and banks have all been foreclosed on. And this is part of the reason why the Vatican stopped taking credit cards. They went to cash only. Now, some people say it was because of the money laundering laws or whatever, but I think this has, what happened here has a lot to do with it.
There's an excellent chance.
I'm sorry?
There is an excellent chance.
There's something, and I brought this up at the beginning of the show about Adnan Salki. Sockley, rather, sorry. He's called for an accounting from everybody. Time to settle up. Oh, wait a minute. Now, if the I got to look this up here and get the right name of the bank, but if the bank that keeps track of everything that's going on here, monetarily wise, turns around and says, "Okay, you guys need to balance your books and let's see who's got what." It's like last call time here at the poker table. It's time to count your chips. And that seems to be what's going on. Now, he says that he's got the authority to do this, that if it's not done by a certain period of time, which I forget exactly what it is, that those countries' currencies would not be allowed to be used. They will become null and void as legitimate currency. So essentially, by one man's say-so, all of a sudden your country's currency can become unacceptable on the exchange and not usable. And guess what? you've just put in a hook for a one-world currency. Now,
well, it's going to be a one-world currency. The thing is,
Plus,
absolutely.
with
plus there is a really strong theory that just as in the movie Deep Impact, where the president says they've been spending too much money and they can't cover it anymore, that all of these underground bases and the food storage places and all the storing of everything,
I'm sure including gold.
And those, they're holding it off. They're pushing the bubble as long as they can until the event happens.
Yeah, and then if you want to eat, you're going to have to get the chip.
Well, he might go further than that, Michael. You know, here's the thing: if we get and there's no reason to say no, it's impossible, it'll never happen. No, wait a minute. This stuff is real, folks. It's been talked about in the prophecies. It's been recorded in history. It's a cycle of the universe. It's just that we're in the wrong place at the wrong time as far as crossing the Great Rift and having Nibiru and its friends come through, which is essentially the Hopi prophecy of the blue and the red Kachina. If Nibiru is the red Kachina, then it's very possible that Comet Ison, which we're going to see in November, is the blue Kachina. But here's the thing. You've got 80% of the population of the Earth, 80%, which live within 90 miles of the coast.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter which coast you're on. So guess what? If we don't say anything to the people, and we want to reduce the Earth's population anyway, here's a chance that 80% of the people are going to get caught at the coast somehow, and we can get most of them.
Here is where the Georgia Guidestones fall right into place.
What's 80% of 7+ billion? What's that?
560 billion. I mean, come on. Is going to be a small amount left behind. That's
right.
Okay, but it's only going to be the pure at heart because, I mean, if anybody knows anything about quantum energy,
and it's that small amount of survivors. That is what the powers that be here in the United States are preparing to deal with. That's why.
I wish them well with that.
Yeah, me too.
Exactly. Because when everything falls apart, you will not be able to go to your gun store to buy ammunition. Everything you have will be running out. That's why they're going to be the ones in charge. Exactly. And that's why the FEMA camps are there. Because they're going to have to deal with the survivors.
Well, they're going to have to deal with a lot more than that because, you see, essentially we get blasted back to the Stone Age, and it happens in an instant.
Yeah.
It's not going to take very long for this to go on, and then it's going to be rebuilding after that. Now, what falls out from all of this? And I don't... I'm not going to say that the waves that are coming in are going to be 7,000 feet high or 700 feet high or 70 feet high. There's going to be some movement there, no doubt, and I would put the idea in the neighborhood of somewhere probably around 200 feet. But still, a lot of people can go wherever they want to go with that number. But still, 200 feet, you still affect 80% of the world's population.
Well, in one of the things that Mr. Sitchin said, if I remember it correctly, he said that when Nibiru does come through, kiss goodbye to 95% of the population on the planet.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised because by my own calculations over the years, I'd be glad if 5% made it through this. And that's, it's going to come down to a lot of things. Papa Bear, you started to say something, which I want to know where you were going to go with this. And I apologize, I don't remember where you left off. Do you recall where you left off?
Yeah, I was mentioning something about quantum energy.
Yeah.
Everybody gives off a quantum energy, and it all based around your thoughts. Okay. And it affects everything around you.
Let me just interrupt for a second. This is important because I'm going to make a point at the end of this. There's a lot of importance right here in what Papa Bear is saying.
See, the whole universe is made of quantum energy. There's basically 3 different matters. You've got matter, antimatter, and dark matter. And that's what keeps it all afloat. It's no different than Kesh technology with anti-gravity. It's the same thing. It's quantum energy. And we all give that off with our brains, with our brain waves. And we do it with our, with our actions, with our thoughts. And we don't even know about it. I mean, it affects everything around us. It's really a phenomenon and a half. Also, the pineal gland, that's one to be cleansed, because if you can cleanse that, you can actually reach into your inner side, and you'll get messages from yourself you never even knew that were there.
I would tend to agree with that. Now, here's an interesting thing. Everything works on vibrations. When you get down right to the atomic structure and subatomic structure and you get into string theory, it's all vibrating energy, which essentially means everything's vibrating at a specific set speed. Depending on what that set speed is, we get all the molecules that make us up. But where do those little vibrations come from? Well, you see, it goes right back to the creator of all things, and that's where you have to bring in a supreme being. And it all works on vibrations. Good vibrations. That's where it comes down to. Now, here's an interesting thing. When you go to Malachi, the 4th chapter, and you read the 1st and 2nd verse, and this is interesting in comparison with what's going on now, it says that the day will burn like the furnace, and all of those presumptuous ones and wicked ones are going to become as chaff, and they're going to be burned up, and it will not leave them neither root nor bough. And it says, but to those who are in fear of my name, the Son of righteousness, and it's S-U-N of righteousness, will bring healing in its wings. The sun with wings. Interesting. Could this be Planet X? Could be.
Well, the sun isn't really heat. It's all magnetic energy.
Yeah.
And that's where it all comes from. So it's not really hot at all.
How come every time God wants to heal us, we've got to go through some shit?
Well, because look at the world around us. I mean, how do you turn around and get the bankers to come clean? How do you get the governments to come clean? How do you get the church to come clean? How do you get all of business to come clean? How do you turn around and yeah, you see, and these guys aren't going to say, okay, well, we're going to change the way we do business. We're not going to pump oil out of the ground anymore. We're going to give everybody free energy. Well, yeah, where's the money in that? It comes down to that. So this system needs to be removed. The Earth is never going to be destroyed. Armageddon isn't the doomsday end of the world. It's the doomsday end of the world system that we're being forced to live under. And it's when we come...
not making it.
Yeah.
Peter.
I'm sorry. Hold on, Papa Bear.
No, I'm sorry. You struck a nerve with me, because everything that exists because of frequency. It's all on frequencies. And if the frequency changes, like the new song that no one's heard, everything, all states of matter are going to change.
Yeah, and you see, here's the thing. If we are in harmony, then, it's like when a singer breaks a glass with their voice. That glass hits a point of disharmonics, and all of a sudden it goes boink, and it's broken. But if we are in harmony with the whole multiverse, so to speak, then guess what? We start to get a healing off of that because we are in harmony. So how do you get in harmony, and what are we getting in harmony with? Well, Jesus gave us the greatest commandment. You must love Yahweh your God with your whole heart, soul, and mind. Okay, so who is Yahweh? By best definition, Yahweh is the soul of the multiverse in which we live. So let me give you a definition of soul. Your consciousness and your life force. Now, it's interesting. Genesis says that when we die, he's going to ask it back. So, there you go. All of a sudden, we see this giant white orb of pure energy, and we're getting sucked back into it. Everybody who's got a near-death experience, or just about everybody who's got a near-death experience, gets to see the white light.
Well, I think we're the strongest of the souls. Personally, I mean, ever since I was a child, I believe that I came here, I was sent here with something to do. Okay, yeah. And when I'm done, I'll go back.
And that could very well be.
I think the strongest of us, the strongest souls, for the most part, we're actually sent here. You know what I mean? Or we asked to be here, just specifically for this event.
Papa Bear, I've got to go back to when my mother was like 12 or 14 years old to an event that happened in her life, which made my life possible. And that event had nothing to do with my father.
You know, another way of looking at this could also be this, is that a lot of the people on this planet are ready to step into the next zone, and the ones that haven't won't.
Well, you
know,
see, that's
kind of negative, but that's what we've kind of come up with.
And that's where the second part of this, of what Jesus said, comes into play. Not only are we supposed to have love toward Yahweh or build that personal relationship. So how do you do that? Well, you got to learn more about what it's all about, but it's based on love. But Jesus said we must love our neighbors as we do ourselves. That doesn't mean getting ready to put a bullet in your neighbor's head because he's hungry.
And your enemies.
Yeah,
you know?
He said if you love the people who aren't your enemy, if you do something and you're persecuted for it, then be happy because you were found worthy. And he said, what is it to love your neighbor and not love your enemy or hate your enemy? But isn't it a greater thing to love your enemies too? You know, what am I going to do if there's a whole militia walking down my street with rocket launchers and whatever else they got standing behind them? I'm going to turn around and I'm going to stand there in the middle of the street and say, "You can have my gun when you peel my gold with dead fingers off of it," and start shooting? What are you, nuts?
That's sick. You know, you almost understand this. See, all the talk about gun laws, you know, and everybody wants to repeal them, this, that, and the other. And I'm probably one of the guys out there on Facebook that's saying, hey, we've got a Second Amendment right, not to mention the Militia Act of 1903, you know. But the only gun I have is so old it doesn't even have a safety.
And those are the people that the powers that be are going to have to deal with when this stuff does happen, when everything calms down and the dust settles. They're going to have to reassert authority.
That all depends. That all depends on the timing of this, because you see, these events point to it essentially points directly to Revelation, the 19th chapter. And now you've got another extraterrestrial or alien event that's going on. It says the King of Kings and Lord of Lords is coming back with the armies of the heavens or the armies of the multiverse. And when you go by the numbers that are laid out in Revelation, it's 2 to 1, but not only that, the immortals are right with them. So you're dealing with powers that it's like I said to a guest who was a channeler for the Galactic Federation of Light, and she totally agreed. I said, every knee will bend before the immortals, both human and alien, or they will be held to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. Love the sinner, hate the sin. That's all you can do.
You know, that's it. Wouldn't it be great? And you know, I would have to go back and look for it because it's not really a direct part of prophecy, but it does say that the nations are given the chance to sue for peace. They can turn around and they could say, okay, we're not going to do business this way anymore. We're going to start taking care of the people. We're going to start, we're going to put down our arms, and we're going to really do what the United Nations says, beat your swords into plowshares, which they stole from the Bible and totally discredit. Yeah. But, you know, here's a point where if the nations wanted to, they could turn around and stop the military spending, put that money into land reclamation, and start doing things for the people. The companies can turn around and say, yep, we made plenty of profits, we had a good run, it's time for free energy. But to get to this point, these guys aren't going to want to give up their bonuses and their multi-million-dollar salaries. And they're the ones that are calling the shots. So what do you have to do?
Well, I mean,
regular business.
The way we screwed up the earth.
We outnumber them. We've allowed this to happen.
Well, it's not that we allowed it to happen. It was perpetrated upon us. There's a difference. You know, how many of us have time to tune into CNN and hear what laws they're presenting on the floor? Well, yeah, but, you know, unless you know those laws, how could you ever have a say in what they're passing? You see, so they're passing laws that we don't even have a clue about and are totally at the result of. Very few laws by the people ever make it.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
They do. Look at Obama. He signed the NDAA on New Year's Eve while everybody was out dancing. That's how they work.
But they left out. They left out the amendment that was supposed to be put in. It was voted in. They just stripped it right out of it. Why do you think the states are now doing their own thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Please do not forget the chemtrails that have been blown in our skies since at least 2007.
Well, here again, another piece of biblical prophecy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I have copies of a 2007 lab report from samples from Italy and from Texas. And
you find nanotechnology?
Yeah, nanotechnology. Nasty stuff, nasty images. Ever hear of something called Morgellons?
Morgellons disease, yep, and everybody seems to have it.
Well, I think right now
that was in the stuff.
The biggest danger I think we're facing right now today is, I think, the geoengineering. I think that it's just, you know, the stuff that they're throwing in our air, and now we're at a point, I was talking with Peter about this earlier, we're at a point now where we're screwed if we do and screwed if we don't, basically.
Exactly.
Well, we've destroyed all the life there is in the Pacific Ocean and in the Gulf Coast. I mean, look what we're doing. There's plastic everywhere, and these geniuses can't figure out that if you heat it to 375 degrees, you can separate the paraffin from the oil and recycle the oil? Come on, what's wrong with these guys?
But the mass animal die-offs that have been happening for at least 2 years are
200 species a day.
Right. Are not happening because of what we are doing. These are happening because of what's happening out there in space that is affecting our planet. Those mass animal die-offs go anywhere from crabs and stuff on the bottom. Down there in South America, they had the giant squid coming up in the thousands. It had birds falling from the skies all around the planet. They had cattle dying.
Yeah, much of the fish is, much of the fish is because the water doesn't get warm enough for them to breed. It has to be a certain temperature, and the temperatures just aren't going right for them to breed.
But not in
the pollution's not helping either. Not in radiation.
But not in the huge amounts at one time that are showing up. I agree with you. We have badly polluted this planet, but these mass animal, fish die-offs are all because of what's been happening for the last 2 years.
Well, the Earth is
and
a living...
The news media has been downplaying or refusing to even mention. The news media is under a mass order to not talk about anything out there in space. All of this stuff that's been showing up around our sun for the last 2 years has been like saying, look at me. Why aren't you guys talking about this?
Right. Well, the Earth is a living organism.
Ocean floor, and we got methane, a lot of methane coming up.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Earth is about ready to shed its parasites, and that's the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there have been seen recently, a lot of people have been finally looking at the SOHO images and the stereo behind images. There are huge probes being seen around our sun. These probes are trying to keep our sun quiet while this thing is going through.
That's an interesting observation, and I've actually, one of my Facebook friends up out of Canada who sometimes listens to the show, he was right on top of this. He started posting things on my Facebook page, and what you see are,
I'll have to go to your page tonight.
I wish you the best finding it. I've got a very active page. It's interesting that I get over 150 comments or different replies throughout the day from different people on stuff that gets posted onto my page. It's almost impossible to keep up with it anymore. And there's a tremendous amount of good information there. There really is. So, and it's not just stuff that I post, it's stuff that other people posted. And this one friend of mine posted this stuff. You look at the sun, and this is right from, I guess, one of the, I'm not sure which satellite it was actually from, but it was essentially the infrared image of the sun. And so you can see all of the ejecta that's coming off of the sun in the coronas that are being poured off. And all of a sudden, you see this little thing that's traveling through this stuff. It's making a way, kind of like a boat does. And you see it go up to the sun, and then it looks like it takes a little bite, and then goes away with this little...
No, there's more dangers. And I go on the record as saying, for me, I think geoengineering is the most dangerous threat that we face right now. And I know I think there's many reasons for the chemtrails. Some say, well, they're doing it to hide Nibiru or anything that's in space going on. And that could be some of it, but I think that's a very small equation to why they're geoengineering. I think my guest the other night made great sense when he says it's something that they started doing, it's gotten out of hand, and now they can't stop. And now he even says that storms like Sandy, yes, HARP was used, but they were actually using HARP to try to slow the storm down and try to weaken it because of the damage they've caused. They don't want people to catch on. So you can look at it many ways. The fact of the matter is our skies are being sprayed for many reasons, whether it's land grabs, control of the food, depopulation, you name it. No matter what the reason is, it's damaging a lot on this planet. And then there's that. Then you've got, of course, the sinkholes and the cracks in the ocean floor with the methane gas pouring out. And then you've got, I'll think about all these nuclear facilities we have, these power plants around the globe. Imagine if the power goes out. And, let's face it, eventually it's going to happen. But anyways, with me here, I have Peter Kling. We've got callers Bob from California and Papa Bear. And if you want to get in on the conversation, there's still some time for you. 347-989-1012. Press 1 so we know you want on. And you can call in using Skype, the website, www.latenightinthemidlands.com. And Peter Kling,
Michael,
Papa Bear, and Bob, you're back. Yes, Peter.
You make a good point. We're facing all this stuff at the same time. It's like, wait a minute. It's like disaster du jour. Which one would you like today? And
there's other things happening out in space
that we don't even know about.
No one else is talking about, because those ships that I've been telling you about that come through, they're fighting with someone up there. We posted one of the images on the thing on your website showing one of the ships opening fire on something.
Yeah,
okay?
I've seen that.
And it's straight out of Star Trek, the power these things have. And we have multiple images showing them being attacked and fighting off something. Okay? Plus, there's one other thing. A lot of people probably have seen this thing very close to our sun that's about the size of Jupiter. Okay? Every once in a while, a CME will blow over it, and you can see the outline of it.
That's what I've been looking at Newmeyer Station.
Yes.
Go ahead.
That thing has been imaged since 1998. Okay, once then, once in 2005, the third time in 2008, and recently a CME went around it, and you could see it sucking off the sun. Okay? This thing is huge. This thing has come in, raced around our sun without affecting the planets in our system. The SOHO images have caught it numerous times. We have at least 4 images showing, and we enlarged one of them to show exactly what it was. So there's someone else out there playing around.
Well, I'm going to ask you a favor. Could you post those images on my Facebook page? If we're not friends yet, send a friend request, and after the show, if you're able to do it after the show, great.
I will post the images. My wife has already put her email up on the talk show part. If you can send your Facebook page to that email, then we will jump on it tonight, and we'll also share them with the radio station. We've been following the emails from the station for quite some time now.
I'll have to make a copy and get it to you.
Yeah.
You know,
but
that,
you know, this is what's happening with this planet. There are undersea bases. There are underground bases. Eisenhower knew this way back when. He was threatened, supposedly, with a treaty that they wouldn't invade us, but they would let us have some advanced technology. In return, they started the abductions and the cattle mutations. If that is real, that's something else.
Yeah, I've heard that from other people.
You can understand how somebody who doesn't look into this stuff as deep as, say, we might, would listen to this and say, these guys are crazy. I mean, you can understand how people take it that way.
There are underground highways that go clean across the U.S. Someone said they drive truck clean up to Lewiston, Maine, which isn't too far from me. I haven't seen when they come out or they go in, but I really haven't looked too hard. In the 60s, there were seeding storms. They did that with airplanes, and that dissipated the storm so it would do less damage. A HAARP only makes it worse. I mean, it just gets worse all the time. But it was proven that seeding the storms would help them rain out faster and they do less damage when they hit the shore. So what they're doing, believe me, they're not seeding storms anymore.
No. They've been preparing us, and supposedly, if any of this information is correct, we have aliens that are not on our side, and we have aliens that are on our side. And the ones that are on our side started doing a mass flyover right after Sitchin's death, October 10th, October 17th, back in 2010.
Yeah, but we've had that technology for years. I mean, Iran has it now. You go to YouTube and just search UFO chases Iranian missile. It's not chasing it, it's tracking it to see what its distance is. That's Iranian technology. I have the blueprints here. I have the plans.
Yeah.
And there was a recent video from Japan, I couldn't find out where a huge UFO was being spotted, and the Japanese fired a huge missile at it, and the missile got about so close and it just disappeared. Okay? And we still have copies of that video because we watched the YouTube stuff really well. We have our own secret space program, believe it or not.
Oh, I know we do. Oh, yeah, absolutely we do. But now these are the bad ones. These are the bad ones who are coming through on these big ships, right? So I would ask, if they could do that and we can't really defend ourselves against them, either God should intervene or maybe he should send some help, maybe some supermen.
Someone or something is intervening because these ships are coming out of warp, subspace, whatever you want to call it. The images are very clear. Every once in a while, one of the two SOHO satellites is pointing in the exact right direction.
Group, if you want to call it that, but it's the woman seed who starts battling with the serpent seed, and the serpent seed is delivered to Earth much earlier than, quote, the woman seed. The serpent seed is delivered to Earth through Babylon and then is dispersed around the Earth through the events of what happened at the Tower of Babel. And so we get sun worship as the major religion in every land, and it still has a connection right down to today. The Star of David, image for sun worship, the swastika, image for sun worship. There's all of these different symbols that we use for an image of sun worship, including the god who represented it, gave us the Star of Raphan, Molech.
Yes.
So there's this direct connection, and the Molech worshippers are still with us today, ruling this world. So yeah, there is a satanic seed which is ruling the world.
All right, gentlemen, hold
for
on
a break.
second. No, actually, I'm gonna wait until.
Yeah.
And Enlil, who was in charge, had a complete snit fit over it. And I'm quite sure that you have read the Book of Enoch.
Absolutely.
And you know why they shifted from we own the humans to, I think we're going to step back and stay behind the curtain and help the humans advance.
Well,
because of the story of that one dude that's in the book that was never there. And they thought that that was a higher power that was interceding in what they were doing.
The one dude in the book that was never where? You just lost me.
Okay, there was this one guy, I forgot his name right now. There was this one guy that presented himself to Enlil and to Enki twice. But when they talked to Anu, the king of Nibiru, which is being called the god, and they are his sons, they found out that that person never met with their father. And they know they saw this person in their dreams before the flood and some other instances in the book, but they couldn't find him. He didn't exist. So they assumed that this one person was a higher form of authority, like a god or something. And they decided to stop treating the humans the way they were, and they allowed them to create the Sumerian culture and the Egyptian culture and other cultures around the planet.
That story is picked up later on in Genesis, I believe it's the 9th chapter, with first talking about Nimrod, who was the great-grandson of Noah, and the story of how all of this comes. The
Temple Knights and that stuff, where they were saving, because there is a lineage that dates from those times on forward.
Yeah, well, you see, this
and
would
a
actually...
lot of people are starting to think those are the people that are in charge in the background now.
Here's where we go into Genesis 3:15, where God says, I will put enmity between... He's talking to the serpent here. And he says, I'm going to, or in essence, Satan or Lucifer, he says, I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and the woman's seed, and he will bruise you in the head, but you will bruise him in the heel. So here's an interesting prophecy. There were no other humans, according to the Bible, on the earth at this time. This starts right in the beginning. So both the woman, interestingly enough, and it's not Eve, it's an off-planetary doubt. Now, it's interesting. The Bible text is very short on what it says about Nimrod, but it gets more involved in the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
And the Tower of Babel actually was a real place. The first century historian Josephus went there. He said he saw it with his own eyes, and he copied down all the legends about
by Marduk.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's at that. What happens is somewhere in time with Nimrod's kingdom is when the Anunnaki show up, and I'm sure it was early on. And that's where all of our religion can be traced back to. I don't care what religion you claim to be. It can be traced right back to the ancient Sumerians and right back to Nimrod. And that's where our government comes from. So what did the Anunnaki give us? The two biggest control systems that exist on the face of the planet today, and governments and religion have been duking it out for over 4,000 years. And now
that also might be the truth behind